So welcome to the second part of my thoughts on the Bozjan Southern Front. I have been caffeinated, ate a few snacks, and have reached peak levels of energy. Why? Because if you haven't checked out the first video, this video is going to be all about reasons to be excited and very pumped for the Bozjan Southern Front. And I genuinely do believe that there are many reasons of why this content is actually a blast. And it is content that I would genuinely recommend everyone try. I have had, honestly, a really good time with it. But anyhow, let's get into the reasons about why you should be head over heels about it, and the reasons of why I think it's fantastic. So this is going to be the exact polar opposite from my last video, which was why you should be depressed about the Bozjan Southern Front. And one thing I should say is that combined, both of these videos are actually the full scope of my thoughts on the content, but I just want to do a unique spin on it rather than just be like, bleh. So if you got a kick out of this content, or just enjoyed and want to help out and support my channel, I'd absolutely love if you'd give the good old Bozjan slap to that like button, and cat daddy that subscribe button. That seems to be my thing now. So calling onto the stage, Optimist Prime, my inner fangirl released. So first off, the Bozjan Southern Front represents a new strain of content type. It is showing that the developers are not just stagnant and staying on the same stream of content that have been proven over the years. The developers are clearly wishing and willing to push the boundaries of what kinds of content we currently have and will have in the future to try new things out. Eureka, Diadem, Verminion minigame, and so many instances of content that many people do not necessarily partake in anymore are actually some of the things that makes Final Fantasy XIV really special and unique in the market. Take World of Warcraft, for instance, which I do need to say, I do enjoy this game. This is not bashing World of Warcraft. But they don't have a housing system in that game, or the Gold Saucer, only to name two examples. And that's not saying it's a bad thing. In fact, World of Warcraft is a game that has used to have a major place in my heart as a young kid back in 2004, and is something that I'm enjoying currently. Hint hint. But we need to sit down and ask the question, how long do we need to do the same type of content? Raids, Mythic plus, Mythic plus, Mythic plus, Mythic plus, raids, Mythic plus, Mythic. When does it get tiring? Optimize your WoWcraft logs or FF logs, get that Raider IO up, raid. See, when I was 4 years old, I was introduced to MUDs, multi-user dungeons, and text-based RPGs on computers. I was immediately fascinated that these things even existed, honestly. But those were originally the original games that I think of when I think about role-playing games. There was never really a notion of raids, especially not in the form that we know them today. And we would never have gone to this point of that content if the developers of the past didn't try and experiment with that type of content, raids in particular. So while many people may eagerly pick apart the flaws of content such as Eureka, I personally do genuinely applaud the developers and their experimentation efforts. Genuinely, I really truly do think that that is such an important thing, to try new things and not be afraid to fail. Because I personally, as a gamer, don't want to be doing the exact same style of raids, Mythic Plus, blah blah blah, for the next 5 years. I need something to shake it up and introduce something new, something old, something underwear related borrowed, and something Rothgar. But that leads to my general next point. The Bozjan Southern Front is nothing like Eureka, outside of massive sweeping generalizations. And I do say this as someone who has actually grinded out all of the armor sets and the Summoner and Scholar book from Eureka content, so I generally like to think that I have a pretty good idea what's going on there. So let's talk about the similarities to Eureka. It's instanced, like almost every piece of content in this game, by the way. It has its own leveling system. It has its own side story. It has special actions that you can use in special builds. There are particular objectives on the map that you want to do. There's a dungeon at the end of it. While that might seem like a long list of things, as I said before, these are sweeping generalizations that miss out on very important points that I'm trying to hope through the course of this video to cover in one way or another. But the main thing is that these may share similarities to Eureka, but pretty much from there, that's it. It's really nothing like Eureka and feels incredibly different to an insanely large degree. And I'm not just saying that, it really genuinely feels dramatically different, like night and day different. So let's start off with the story without giving any spoilers, which will be hard because honestly the story in the Bozjan Southern Front is extremely compelling and I genuinely gushed over it on various servers after completing it. It is superb, really good storytelling, honestly. But part of what makes it so excellent is that it doesn't shy away from incorporating itself into the main canon of the story without giving major spoilers that aren't obvious from the get-go of A Realm Reborn. We're fighting an incredibly large war against the Garlean Empire. Regardless of which expansion, there is an undertone of urgency, despair, and strife with people by the activities done by the Garleans. It's not a, oh happy la la la, we're in Hello Kitty land. It's really, really quite gruesome and dark. And this is only going to become more relevant in the canon very soon, for reasons that I'm not going to spoil here. I genuinely feel like I am a part of the war with this content, which is a way that I have to admit fully on that I did not feel that way in Stormblood outside of a very few set of instances. Now through this Bozjan Southern Front, here I feel entrenched in the war, quite literally. We're getting a deeper look into the Empire and what its brutal policies are, and what those policies have done to the war-torn countries and their people. And as someone who has read a few war novels in the past, the story is extremely compelling, and one that I genuinely could believe. There are some parallels to what you hear people who have gone through those tragedies go through, and their stories, and it's so authentically, genuinely believable. It almost had me shaking at some points because I'm like, oh wow, I literally have read a story that was similar to someone doing something similar. Again, I'm trying my best to not spoil it, but oh my god, really, really good character development. The characters and their motivations for seemingly sinister or seemingly benevolent reasons are very real and engaging. You can feel sympathy for even the most violent of them and understand what may have led them to be on the path that they're on and why they're so convicted to it. All of this is beautifully woven together into the systems from Skirmishes, where the battles will have characters screaming their story, their motivations, their thoughts, or cursing you out, saying, how dare you kill my friends, how dare you kill my allies, and that's from the enemies. And when you take down a Beastmaster's pet, the Beastmaster is at a loss, or the beast is going on a rampage when their master is down, or if it's hurt, how the Beastmaster is just like, oh no, are you okay, so-and-so? Or the leveling system that so many people say is the same to Eureka and just another level system. That is literally woven into this story, this greater tapestry, where the higher level unlocks that you get more resistance ranks, more quests are unlocked, but you are literally with each resistance rank pushing the front line of this war with each level, so it's much more meaningful than just some random statistic. Actually, since we're on the topic of leveling and progression, let's make that our next point. Leveling and progressing in the Bozjan Southern Front is insanely easier than Eureka in my opinion, while also being vastly more engaging. Eureka, even I admit that I have some level of dread of sitting at a particular spot, camping it, killing waves of mob endlessly for half an hour or sometimes longer in a row. I genuinely did not enjoy that. Has Pazuzu spawned? Is the Panini pressed? Yeah, I don't want to go back to that. And when progressing in the Bozjan Southern Front, you are absolutely bombarded with a massive array of critical engagements and skirmishes at almost all times. In fact, the pessimistic video, I stated how difficult it was to catch the ones that spawn just because there are so many spawning. So this is really nothing like Eureka, where I was sitting there twiddling my thumbs with Netflix on the other monitor, unloading my full Black Mage rotation on waves of mobs endlessly. It was painful. You constantly, in the Bozjan Southern Front, have something to do or somewhere to go. If you're standing in one position endlessly, you're going to be doing a very specific type of farm, most likely. Such a specific type of farm that outside of the absolute highest end of Bozjan Southern Front gameplay and farming, most people, especially people who are casual players, probably aren't farming lost actions or clusters like that at all. And I can say that I have no desire to do that myself at all. But for anyone who isn't intentionally doing very specific grind like that, the content is diverse, moving very quickly and constantly presents you with more and more and more. But I forgot to even mention how long it takes to level up your resistance rank to specifically 10, which why do I mention 10? It's the rank that you need to enter the Castrum, which is the dungeon. The max level you can obtain currently is 15, but 10 is really the point that you really want to hit. I'm honestly saying it couldn't have taken me more than 8 hours. If it took more, then I really didn't notice it. It went by really quick. Like the levels, especially the first few, were just bam, 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 bam. It was so quick. The quests even award tremendous amounts of metal to progress. My resistance rank. Skirmishes are tons. Critical engagements are tons. It's really snappy. But one last thing before we get off this point. Leveling doesn't scale your damage against mobs, which was something that happened in Eureka, where if you were like level 5, you couldn't even dare look at a level 7 thing, because that level 7 little vine whippy thing, it was going to whip you into submission. that was so painful. It's just like, why? It doesn't necessarily even have harder mechanics. So in this map, the Bozjan Southern Front, you don't need to worry about that. If you are able to access any area of the map, then you are able to successfully grind there and participate in its content. Period. None of that Eureka painful scaling nonsense. So you don't need to worry about any monsters randomly one-shotting you because it had some arbitrary level higher than you. Same difficulty, regardless of level. Only thing that levels really do is unlock more actions, which you may or may not need. Honestly, I've done Castrum without actions. Maybe that's shame on me, but you really don't need them even. Like me, for instance, I'm only resistance rank 11, and yes, I am taking actions now, but I've been grinding the endgame dungeon successfully for hours on end now, and to that point, yes, I am using the full healer set in some of the footage that you're seeing right now in the background. Did I need more than rank 11 for it? No, clearly no, I did not. Also, Eureka had a system where the more you died, you could literally lose levels. I am not in the slightest concerned about that here, because yeah, do you lose metal? Yeah. But you simply cannot lose resistance ranks once you've attained them, and even the penalty for dying is a complete joke. I've died in the Castrum more times than I dare say in any YouTube video, and I'm still almost rank 12, and I have barely grinded outside of Castrum. I was working on this script in past other videos. Unlike Eureka, you cannot de-level and suddenly be invalid to participate in the content that you've unlocked. Thank goodness. I did not like that system. Now I really want to dive and focus in on skirmishes and critical engagements, because these don't really take much grinding of mobs to spawn and happen very frequently, which is what I said earlier. Unlike Eureka, you don't need to sit there grinding endlessly for it to spawn, meaning that Outer World mobs are only specific farms. But the skirmishes themselves do act very similar to Fates, I will say that. I absolutely agree with it. But Fates, I will say, when you have a proven way to do something, to do open world content that has worked in the past and is provenly getting people to do it, why would you stray too far from it? But I will say that many of these Fates do have unique mechanics and feel significantly more challenging. I'm saying this as someone that just grinded Heavensward Fates for days on end for the relic weapons. Like, these Fates have much different mechanics. They feel much more engaging. You have lore blasted in there. You have, as I said earlier, the story is just woven in. It is so different. So now onto critical engagements. These are wildly different fights. I'm just going to say that outright. These are wildly different, and their mechanics, I can genuinely say, I have found significantly harder than Alliance raids at times. And yes, I'm looking at you, Red Chocobo Nightmare Fuel, or the telegraphs literally everywhere on the ground. But genuinely, these are some of the most interesting fights, and I am seeing some of the walls of difficulty that we had set up at the past, like, don't make content more difficult than this. These walls are being broken down with this content. Some of these fate telegraphs are so ridiculous and insane that honestly, I was in complete glee when I was done the fight. I felt fully engaged, and that's great. That's something that I look for in a game. I want to be fully engaged. Like, that's the make or break point for me, I think, for a lot of content. It's like, if I'm fully engaged and actually need to pay attention, I'm happy. So, Eureka's notorious monsters, by comparison, were honestly, dry, dull, boring, monotonous grind. Kill this boss, run to this boss, kill this boss. There was no variety in comparison. Like, one Eureka boss that actually stands out was, there was this undead dragon on the first map, and it would do a tail swipe. Yeah, trust me, that was the scary part of Eureka there. It really wasn't anything too bad. But here, vastly different. Now, one last note that I will say, that if you are worried about critical engagements, then you can buy an honestly pretty cheap buff that will let you queue in with priority to any critical engagement that you go into for the next hour. 5 clusters is all it costs, and that is really nothing. Passively doing content, and I have not farmed for it at all, I have over 50 and just spam them to join Castrum. It's really cheap. And so if that point wasn't enough to dispel your fear, then fine. Let's talk about the Castrum itself. So a lot of people think about Baldassion's Arsenal, myself included, and that required so much prep time. It was actually such a chore to get into. It was a chore to organize people. It was a chore to set up. It was a chore to unlock. It had so many layers of frustration on frustration on frustration. But this dungeon in Bozjan's Southern Front, this Castrum, I can say that it's actually one of the most fun things that I've had in a good while in game. Without giving spoilers, there are some major mechanics that fights are huge in scale. I'm talking huge, like we're talking full 48 people, like double Alliance raid size. We're talking about multiple platforms, multiple bosses at the same time, ad phases with multiple bosses going on at the same time. Literally even dungeon crawling with various other groups frantically trying to achieve our goals for more rewards and coordinate. Heck, a lot of these fights even are based on cooperation and communication, I will say at this point. Something that is sorely lacking from a quite large number of pieces of content right now, such as I can queue into an expert roulette right now and I don't need to say a word and probably wouldn't read a word the entire time from start to finish. Yeah. This is in fact one of the major reasons why me and so many other people were excited about Classic World of Warcraft last year. Because we were just like, oh my gosh, this might get the community actually talking and engaging with one another for content, finally. Which honestly was the only part of Eureka I can genuinely say I truly enjoyed outside of the glamours, as in the actual content. Once the newness wore away after a few days in Eureka, that was all that I liked. The socializing, the engagement, and community. Honestly, that's the only reason I even have this channel, because the community is everything. Now, there was something brought out about the difficulty to enter the Castrum, and again, this is something that community efforts, like various dedicated Discord servers, are striving to connect the community together for runs of Castrum, and so yay community. But let's be serious here for a second. I do want to say this. Like, it is so much different than Baldassion's Arsenal. Like, the amount of preparation that you needed for that is so much more than this. Like, you basically don't need anything else other than this. It was like you'd have to find people and then, like, 20 other things. But let's be super serious here. And should I have it in the Optimus video? But I want to add this here. I do think with how important Castrum is to spam later in the game, that there hopefully is going to be something done to make it easier to participate in exclusively Castrum. Because honestly, I'm at the point where I've grinded pretty much everything I want, but I just need Castrum runs, if I'm being super honest. Moving on from that point, let's talk about how Fate grinding is supposedly more effective to get relics than it is to go into the Bozjan Southern Front for relics. Is Fate grinding a bad thing? No. It's options, and I'm a huge proponent of giving people more options to do anything, especially when it comes to tackling the content that they want to do in any game. Do you want to raid to achieve item level 500? Do you want to just grind dungeons in something like Mythic Plus style? Do you want to just do tomestones? Do you want to do this or that? Well, the more options that you have to do, the better in my opinion. No one should have to feel subjected to content that they don't want to do in order to achieve their goals and participate in the content they want to. Whether you're a raider or not a raider, whether you are a Mythic Plus player or not a Mythic Plus player, you should be always able to play the content you want to play, and you shouldn't have to feel like, oh, I need to go off and do these 3,000 other things that I don't want to do this one thing. So I don't know why we're framing Fate farming as such a bad thing, when clearly if you don't like the Bozjan Southern Front, you can honestly go and try the other content. It's not an insanely great thing that you can choose that instead, I suppose, or how should I phrase it? I just don't get why people are putting it as a negative that they can Fate farm. I think that this is such a positive. Now, in terms of the Bozjan Southern Front's rewards, this is an instance that drops some of the coolest loot ever. Insanely cool mecha mount? Check. Scary mount that scares people with Evyx raid math? What's a prime number again? Check. Epic music? Check. Insanely cool armor sets? Check. Literally a stuffed plush mechanical beast? Check. Or what about relic armor? This is something that I think too many people are forgetting even exists. The relic armor on its own looks stunningly good and amazing, and is a stark contrast from other gear sets in the game that are very polished, very refined, or very much lingerie, and stands out as a very unique and grunge styled with faded, ripped kind of Gene style. My inner preteen skateboarding obsessed Tony Hawk fan from the 2000s is absolutely screaming at this awesomeness. But is that all of that not enough? Well, you can sell this. As in, yes, you can literally make a profit off of running Bozjan Southern Front content. Like, no, not just a little profit, a significant profit. These items are selling around 2 million a pop on Gilgamesh for the relic armor upgrades, or 2 million per mount. That's not even taking into account selling individual lost action fragments. It's remarkably easy to kill, especially if you don't have a crafter or gatherer leveled up. As in, how to put it? Sure, you could technically grind Tsukiyomi endlessly, hoping that RNG is going to bless you with a Celestial Kimono drop that sells pretty well, and you're going to need to get more than just one to get to 7 million points. Or you could do a steady grind for an absolute jackpot of Gil, which I do consider new, fun, and engaging content. I mean, I've grinded Tsukiyomi so many times, I really don't want to go back. Even to me, though, who is a pentamelded crafter, turning over 7 million Gil in profits is, as in pure profits for the record, is really good. This is pure profit as in, it's not me buying reagents, it's not me buying anything off of the market board. It takes me days, like literally days, to make 7 million Gil properly, just crafting. And that's with me pentamelded. And people will be like, oh, are you just garbage? No, I just don't... I don't know how people are making like 100 million on the day. It must be like market board flipping, because like I don't do that. Like I can't make more than like 20 million in a day. And that's trying hard, genuinely. But people are just like, oh, but you can sell potions and gear for X amount. And yeah, but I don't think a lot of people realize that, yeah, you spend like 50% of the profits on Gil, or what about the cost of equipment? Like, the cost to maintain a pentamelded crafter and gatherer set, or the reagents to make the materials, or the shards and clusters, or the food to boost your stats so you can craft, that is expensive. Like, get real. This is really honestly straightforward profits, to the point that I don't think anyone, especially those without crafter gatherers or a lot of Gil already, should turn their nose up at. Like, this is really good. And I should say that you don't even need to grind out all Bozjan coins to get an upgrade. So they do seem to pretty often drop for everyone other than me. This is why I say Tsukiyomi RNG. Do you really want to do RNG? Like, I have not gotten a drop rate, and I don't know what the drop rate is, but almost every run I see a few people spamming their drop with glee. Yeah, I'm jealous. So yeah, pretty decent source of Gil, honestly, especially, like, as I said, if you don't have some way already set up, really good. And so now, without getting into the nitty-gritty details, I want to talk about special lost actions and builds that you can honestly do some pretty crazy stuff in the Bozjan Southern Front, such as stacking haste gear from the Southern Front alongside some of these buffs. It's crazy. Like, some mind-bogglingly broken, hilarious builds have genuinely made me cry laughing, like this video playing right now in the background, credits obviously in the source. This is a Black Mage endlessly spamming Despair, which is an ability that hits like a truck. The possibilities for builds are hilarious in here. I am really a fan of the full support healing paladin build that dumps out so much healing that it puts even my healers to shame instantly. It is a lot of healing. Now lastly, I want to talk about some things that stood out to me. Themes, Beastmasters, pets, giant mecha robots, Gundams, cat daddies, daddies with giant glowing fell green axe, my favorite summon Andromelch from Final Fantasy XII. Honestly, there are so many themes, and this content hints at things so strongly, like Beastmaster. Oh my god, Beastmaster. Yeah, let's put Lucio in game. But this hints at so many things that I feel that this genuinely adds so many unique layers to the game. Not only just in combat types, not only just in canon lore, but it's just everything combined adds up to so much. Now, with all that said, my Optimist Prime steps off of the stage for now. Overall, these are my thoughts and feelings and opinions, both the gushing compliments and the rather scathing criticisms. Overall, though, what would I say if I had to cut this down to like a short paragraph blurb? This content is content I'd recommend to people to take seriously. I absolutely do enjoy it myself, and I think everyone should at least give it a try. I think in its current state, it is absolutely blast. Even if you have just isolated the Castrum, I would really love even just spamming that. And this is saying this in spite of those teething problems that I mentioned in the past video. It is an absolute joy. I realized that Eureka had a plethora of very major issues, and it was a huge experiment that, while I do consider it a success, unfortunately was plagued with very major issues that I think were very obvious to everyone. But I think that the legacy of that content has made very many people very sour to this type of content, immediately writing it off as Eureka Shadowbringers Edition. Even myself, I had a huge layer of skepticism walking into this content. But when I tried it, I genuinely tried to keep an open mind to it. And honestly, I was absolutely blown away with how much changed. The developers clearly listened to the feedback on Eureka Experiment and have changed so many aspects of this content. In my opinion, I would easily call the Eureka Experiment a full-on success, given that it led up to this content just from this point alone. I do enjoy this content genuinely, and I do believe others will enjoy it. Not to mention that the story alone, I think, is invaluable to the main story of the game. In fact, I would recommend anyone, even if you don't care about any content, even if this is all outdated in a year, this is really, really good lore. This adds so much, so many layers of depth that I'm genuinely happy that I sat down and watched it. But let's cycle back. Getting a little too positive there, but this is my genuine full-on scope opinion. Does it have issues? Yes, it does, absolutely. But few new types of content are without some bumps and bruises. And let's remember that this is only the first part of the Bozjan Southern Front. There are so many more levels to go until the next expansion, and this means that this content is going to be iterated over and over again and constantly improved. And for that, I am genuinely excited. Like, take for instance the Castrum duty roulette. Maybe that's going to be a thing. I think that there is so much potential to this content. I am literally so excited for it. Anyhow, that is all for this video, and I know that this one is unfortunately way longer, but I think that it says a lot that this video is longer because I just really I really enjoy it a lot, and I do recommend it to everyone. Anyhow, that is all for this video, and I hope to catch y'all either in the Bozjan Southern Front or in my next video, or both, hopefully, wink your face. But anyhow, if this video at all entertained you, or you liked my opinions, or wanted let me know what you agree with or disagree with, feel free to leave a good old Bozjan punch to that like button, and cat daddy that subscribe button, and leave a wonderful comment. Anyhow, enough of this video. This is getting long, and I promised myself you'd do shorter content, and I'm failing.